Donald creates the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Woods, touchdown, LA!
Picked off by John Johnson.
Caught, touchdown, Tyler Higbee. It's Michael Brockers who gets there.
A'Shawn Robinson.
Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air.
Taylor Rapp, who had one taken away, will take this into the end zone.
Henderson with a good run and a first down, still on his feet.
Safety in the arms of Leonard Floyd.
Up top, touchdown, Van Jefferson.
Terrell Lewis.
Everett in stride. Wow!
Hit behind the line, Terrell Burgess, 26.
At the goal line and in for his second touchdown. Malcolm Brown into the end zone.
Abu Khan with the strip sack.
Picked off by Troy Hill.
Akers with a stiff arm. Akers into the end zone. Cam Akers.
LA will play for the Lombardi.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, is Alexis Kraft. And this is episode 305 of the Downtown Rams podcast. Before we get into it, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And for a limited time, we have a special deal for you guys, for you listeners. You guys typing in the promo code DTSN in the Thrive Fantasy app will get you $20 for your additional $20 deposit. Thrive Fantasy, they've eliminated the need to do countless hours of research because they only ask about the top tier athletes in a respective sport. If you're talking about the NFL, which, you know, we are an NFL podcast, we're more geared towards the Rams, but I'm sure you guys played fantasy football before. Choose 10 out of the 20 player prop options to build your lineup. Essentially, it's making fantasy football a lot easier. So if you ever, didn't know who to select or add or what have you, basically I just went through it. Thrive Fantasy, it's pretty easy. You go through and you think, Robert Woods, is he going to have 1.5 touchdowns or less? And so it's an over-under type of thing. You pick 10 of them, and that's how you can win a lot of money. So once again, you're going to use the promo code DTSN when you sign up today. You will receive an instant $20 bonus on your first deposit of $20 or more. Download Thrive Fantasy today on the App Store or Google Play Store by visiting their website, www.thrivefantasy.com. Hashtag prop up today and sign up now. All right, well, that is that, and we will dive right into it because we actually just watched the third. And I don't know how many episodes there's going to be, Alexis, but it's the third episode of Hard Knocks Los Angeles. We'll talk about that. There's obviously a lot to discuss. I'll start by just right off the cuff. I still think, and I'm not going to get off my horse about this, 2 teams in an hour time slot is just not. It's just too much. They need another hour. But what were your thoughts? First things that you really take away from this episode? Because to me, I felt like this was their best episode, but I still feel like they're missing something.
I felt like it was the best episode as well. And before we start this off, I want to point out really quickly, if I sound a little bit different, it's because I am on a different mic than I normally am using. I'm actually out of town, so I packed my Yeti mic with me as opposed to the Shure mic, which I typically use just because it's a lot easier to transport. So if I sound a little weird, it's because I'm on a different mic. But yeah, I definitely thought that it was the best episode so far. I do think that there was, and again, I didn't time this or anything, but it does seem like there was significantly more Chargers coverage than Rams. However, I think they made up with that with the Rams scrimmage. But yeah, I just think, again, it's really weird that there's only an hour for 2 teams because theoretically you should have way more than enough content for each team to go over an hour. And I'm not in the editing room. I don't know if it was just a slow week with Rams coverage. Maybe they didn't have as many good action shots from the field or as much behind the scenes stuff as they would have liked for the Rams, and they had more for the Chargers. That would make sense. I have no idea, but it is obviously frustrating as a Rams fan to want to watch your team on Hard Knocks and you feel that you're not getting as much coverage. So yeah, I agree. I do wish it was 2 hours long, but I don't think at this point they're going to change it.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to change it, but at least they're getting away a little bit from the whole, we're going to watch a bunch of people get the COVID testing. I understand, solidifying that early on, and again, the NFL is part of this, so it is somewhat of a PR thing. But it was good, and I remember you saying distinctively in our last episode you wanted to see more football. You got more football. I really enjoyed. I'm not even going to lie. I really enjoyed watching that Chargers battle between Keenan Allen and Chris Harris Jr. I wish we could have seen more of that with Jalen Ramsey and Van Jefferson. The type of the stuff we're hearing about right now in camp. I guess that's really kind of my thing. Because when you're on Twitter and you're looking, you're craving that Rams news, and you're seeing, oh, so and so made a nice hit, or so and so made an interception. Like, you want to see that, and I feel like a lot of that was left out because they went. And I'm not going to say this is uncharted waters for Hard Knocks, because they've done it before with guys like Eric Kush, guys like Danny Woodhead. Like, they have basically keyed in on certain guys. And I'm a big fan of Dante Dion. I've been a fan since the Rams picked him up, a few years back, 2 years back. So I am a fan, but I will say this. I think they showed way too much Dante Dion. They showed way too much Clay Johnston, and they showed way too much Juju Hughes. And the reason I say that is because, they keyed in on those guys in the scrimmage, and I get what they're trying to do is kind of like showcase, the idea of like, these guys are long shots to make the roster, and like they need all the playing time they can get. But like, I actually wanted to see a John Wolford 40-yard run. I wanted to see, the touchdown that everybody was talking about, the one-handed grab by Nasimba Webster when he had Jalen Ramsey covering him. I mean, this was different because it was the first scrimmage, and I don't think the Rams ever really scrimmaged each other, because Jared Goff during the show even said, this is the first time I've ever really played Aaron. And it's like Aaron Donald. And it's like, to me, because of that, and I love the way it was set up. So you had the scrimmage, you had the first team going up against the first team defense, and the second team offense going up against the first team defense. And I loved that, because I felt like, that was a fair competition. And everything that we kept hearing was that Wolford was dominant against the first team defense. So I wanted to see that, and I felt like they really just covered that up, because they had to show us, Dante Dion. And again, I like him. I like everybody I'm mentioning, but they had to show us Dante Dion's few reps, the one where he misses an interception. And they had to show us, a little bit of Juju Hughes getting the toothpick. And then they had to show us Clay Johnston, making a tackle. You see what I'm saying, Alexis? Like, I just feel like they totally left out, and maybe it's because they didn't air the scrimmage. Like, we didn't even get a chance to see it, but I just felt so left out of the scrimmage. And then to, go on Hard Knocks and know that that's going to be shown in Hard Knocks and have them barely show it, I was definitely disappointed, to say the least.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with all that. And something that I kind of remembered and had the realization of is that shows like Hard Knocks, they are trying to appeal to NFL fans as a whole, not just Rams fans and not just Chargers fans, which is really frustrating when you are a Rams fan, or Chargers fan, I suppose, because, you are interested in how's the second team performing, how's our backup quarterback performing, who fits where, what's going on behind the scenes and all of that. But when Hard Knocks is trying to appeal to not just Rams fans, but the other 31 NFL team fans, they're really not thinking of it from that perspective. They're not thinking about what Rams fans specifically care about. They just want what's most interesting and what's most entertaining to be on the screen. So that's something that is frustrating. Especially when you are interested in seeing what's going on behind the scenes. I don't think that we're going to be able to see as much of that as we normally would have, because we are in that 1 hour time slot with two teams, which, we've been talking about. It is frustrating. And as far as, the Dante Dion, Juju Hughes stuff and all that, it's interesting. But personally, I'm into kind of the, who's fitting in where, who's doing well there and all that. And I do think that they are giving those guys a lot of coverage. But I mean, I guess you could also argue that that's what Hard Knocks is about giving kind of the underdogs their chance to shine. So I don't know, but I agree with all the points that you made, and it certainly can be a little bit annoying.
Yeah, and I think Hard Knocks is perfect when, again, there's one team, and two, there's a preseason. And I think, without the preseason, there's a lot of people that just don't care about the underdog, because it's like, I'm definitely someone that fights for the underdog, and I myself felt defeated for a lot of the people that I root for and everything, because I just felt like this is a year to wash. You're not going to be able. I mean, we saw it on Hard Knocks, whether people want to admit it or not. I mean, the guys that were on developmental team, they're probably looking at the practice squad or barely making the 53, but they're not going to be an impact player, not, early on, and I think that, if it was a different type of year, I think this totally would be fine. But I think, also keep in mind, the Rams have a lot of uncertainty with their defense. So, I kind of look at it like, with the new defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, adding that new defensive scheme. And then you have guys like Corey Littleton that are out the door, and Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley. Like, I want to see guys that replace them. You know what I mean? And I just don't feel like we're getting enough of that. I feel like we're focusing, like, I look at it like the linebackers, like not all the starting positions are filled. So, I mean, you could honestly have a pretty good, airtime, at least showing the different position battles. I think they're kind of missing that, but that's just me in that regard. I did think it was kind of cool, the Chargers, when they showed Melvin Ingram just kind of going, because again, it's cool, being able to connect the dots. We were hearing about Melvin Ingram through Ian Rappaport's, news coming out that like he was holding out, but then you watch it and you're like, he's not technically holding out, he's holding in. So I thought, that stuff was cool. I still think Anthony Lynn is awesome. Just trying to be a little unbiased here. I don't think that's the thing that honestly disappoints me, is like, I don't think it's because the Chargers aren't entertaining. I just think I'm entertained by both teams, obviously the Rams more. But I mean, I just don't think there's enough time for those two teams. And especially since everything that's going on, and they have, guys like, the guys that they have on the roster. I mean, you talk about having a Jalen Ramsey on the roster. I mean, you're going to want to give him airtime. But then, you look over with the Chargers, and they have, two guys that were rivals just a year ago, in Chris Harris Jr. and Keenan Allen. I mean, that was the first time we really got a chance to see them, and that came in episode 3. And they're arguably two of the best players at their position. So it kind of goes to show you, though, it's hard to really spread everything out.
Yeah, totally agree. And, especially about Anthony Lynn, I think Anthony Lynn is awesome as well. And I think people who may not be familiar with him are starting to see that with Hard Knocks. But, I just think I was glad to see some action in pads, because we kind of ended the episode last week talking about how we got kind of that little clip of just people going head to head and in practice. And I think anytime the pads go on, that's when it gets real. And again, it's not going to be as intense as an actual game, because even when you're going up against your own players, you don't want to, injure them or hurt them or in any way. And we kind of heard one of the Chargers coaches talking about that. Like, if you have a chance to absolutely wreck somebody, kind of think twice, because you don't want to hurt your own teammates. That's not really productive. But I thought it was interesting. And again, I wish that there was more time, but I do think it is kind of helpful to see, inside things such as, Clay Johnston. I didn't know that his dad was really good friends with Brett Favre. That's something we probably would have never known had it not been for Hard Knocks. So things like that are always interesting to watch.
Yeah, the Papa Favre bit, I did enjoy that. I wasn't trying to knock Clay Johnston. I was more looking at those guys. It's weird, but like when they started playing at the scrimmage, then I was kind of annoyed, because I was like, all right, I want to see the starters. I want to see guys that are getting the majority of the reps and making the most of them. But I hear you. I mean, I definitely agree with that. With that being said, because we did touch on Hard Knocks. Again, there's not a ton to talk about because Hard Knocks is not that long. And I think we hit on everything Rams-ish. I mean, I'm sure that we're missing some Chargers components, but that's fine. As far as, the rest of this podcast goes, I do want to talk a little bit, about what's going on in camp. And I do want to talk a little bit about the kicking competition, but I really, really am excited to bring up, the Rams didn't get anybody today. They didn't make a move. But they did go out and they placed an unsuccessful waiver claim on former Boise State edge defender Curtis Weaver, who was a 5th round pick by the Dolphins. He is out for the year. Okay, like he is not going to play. The Browns get him and they'll have him, and they'll probably have to keep him on the 53 and then release him, and he can go right to IR. But it's really interesting to me that the Rams put a claim on him. Now, Alexis, I want to ask you what your first thoughts were when you found out about that. And is this, more about Weaver's ability as a player, or is this more about maybe the Rams feel like they're lacking in this department?
I think the Rams think that they're lacking in that department. I mean, I like Curtis Weaver. I'm not knocking his talent by any means, but I do think this move stems more from the Rams' desire to beefing up their kind of edge attack, those outside guys. I mean, theoretically, off the top of my head right now, the Rams on the edge position, you obviously have your front three, but then you've got probably most likely Samson Ebukam. And then on the other end, people are saying like Justin Lawler would be starting. And I'm not going to trash Justin Lawler by any means, but I think that is probably a spot that they're kind of like wondering if they can upgrade at some point, or they could, have a lot more depth there. So I think that it says a lot about how the Rams feel their edge attack is going. That was a position that we were kind of worried about, I think, going into the draft, and even after the draft. I didn't think that they really addressed that like they should have, especially because it looks like Leonard Floyd is probably going to be playing inside. I could be wrong about that, but I think most people are thinking he's going to be playing at inside backer. But yeah, that the kind of the edge rush is a little bit concerning. So I do think that that's where they were looking at Curtis Weaver.
Yeah, it is, a little bit concerning. I think it's just the lack of, premier talent. I mean, anytime you lose a pass rusher like Dante Fowler, you're definitely in the hole if you don't have a back, you don't have a plan. And I mean, do the Rams have a plan? I mean, sure, they grab Leonard Floyd, who, I mean, I think he'll play on the outside. Maybe they'll use him inside. They like his length. And I think that's the thing, is like Brandon Staley's looking for guys that are going to bat down passes at the line of scrimmage. Leonard Floyd can do that. And then Terrell Lewis, who is of course, the 3rd round rookie out of Alabama. He is off the COVID list, so he's good to go. And I believe he did start. Yeah, I mean,
I was totally blanking about that.
Well, it happens. There's a lot of names out there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it sounded like he was starting for the Rams in the scrimmage. So I mean, I'm thinking you're probably going to see, a combination of Leonard Floyd, Leonard Floyd, Terrell Lewis, and I'd probably say Samson Ebukam and Obanaya Okoronkwo. Keep in mind, Josh Carraway is still there. He flashed a bit in preseason. He's an NFL veteran. He's been around the league a little bit. Then Nitrez Patrick, who really flashed last preseason. He can play inside or outside from his days at Georgia. And then, I look at somebody like Ja'Kai Polite, who I think no one's talking about, but I'd love to see him get an opportunity because, I really think Ja'Kai Polite could be special. He's in the right, I won't say the right system, but he at least is in the right organization. He's around guys like Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, 2 guys that are, true pros of this game. I think they should continue to try to develop Ja'Kai Polite. His film at Florida was very impressive to me. I had him as a late 1st, early 2nd round grade. He went in the 3rd, has been cut twice, the Jets and the Seahawks. The Rams held on to him, though. They signed him to a futures deal. He's still on the roster. He made it through the first swing of cuts. So, we'll see. No one's talking about him, but that doesn't mean he's not doing anything because, I'll say this right now. It's really easy in a scrimmage and it's really easy in a practice to give guys credit when they're clearly, they're jumping up and making an interception or, they're making that sweet catch. But, the guys that get left behind in that regard, the guys in the trenches. That's why, no one knows how well, the offensive line is blocking because, again, it's training camp, it's scrimmage. And Aaron Donald, I think today Sean McVay gave Aaron Donald a day off and then said, our offensive line, the guys in the trenches needed a break. That is the type of guy Aaron Donald is. So, I think getting Curtis Weaver probably would have added to that rotation. I at the end of the day, I think they have plenty of guys, but the question is, are they just bodies or are these guys that can contribute? And we're going to find that out because, even everything that you kind of have to scrap. Samson Ebukam can be a rotational guy in Wade Phillips' scheme, but we haven't seen anything with the new Brandon Staley scheme. So it'll be interesting. If all these guys can play in that scheme, then they're going to have, depth for days. But if none of them can play, then you're starting to look at an issue. But I thought it was very, very, very intriguing that the Rams made a claim on him. Moving on, the kicker competition, during the scrimmage, Liram Hajrulahu, I'm never going to get that guy's name right. He has to be the favorite. Alexis, I don't know if you saw, but he made every single field goal during the scrimmage. Sam Sloman, the 7th round pick, who we weren't as high on because we just didn't agree with spending a 7th rounder on a kicker when they already signed 2. Sam Sloman went, I believe, 1 of 4, and McGinnis missed a field goal, but other than that, he was perfect. Who do you think ends up winning this battle? Because I find myself, and I've felt this way since they signed him, going with Liram.
I think so as well. And again, it is just so infuriating that we even drafted a kicker for this reason. When we drafted a kicker, I was just, and it's nothing against kickers. Listen, totally nothing against you. But to spend a draft pick on a position where after the draft, you're going to have a plethora of kickers who are more than able, most likely, to perform at the NFL level. So why waste a draft pick on it? So then to waste a draft pick on a kicker who's probably not even going to make the team is just infuriating when you could have used that draft pick on adding edge depth or adding depth at another position. I think that the guy with the really long last name, as I'm going to refer to him from now on, or Liram is his first name, right?
It's Liram Hajrulahu.
Liram. Okay, him. He is I think the favorite. We can't keep 3 kickers on the team. I think we're gonna end up releasing the guy that we drafted.
Yeah, I think so as well. There's 16 practice squad spots. There's 6 of those that can be obtained by anybody of any sort of experience in the league. It's only for this year. I'd imagine it's, what happens when you're dealing with a season that is also part of the whole COVID thing. But it should be interesting if they end up keeping a kicker on the practice squad. I know that's been frowned upon before, but if you have 16 spots, maybe now this is the time you do it. Regardless, I just, how I feel about when the Rams picked Sam Sloman. It had nothing to do with him. It was more so I really liked and I already forgot his name, but I really liked the St. Louis Battlehawks kicker, whose name just totally escaped me. But I felt like he was, yes, Taylor Russolino. I really liked him. Felt like, he had the consistency, the leg. And the second best kicker in the XFL to me was Austin McGinnis. So, the Rams also have him. So maybe he beats out Sam Sloman and takes one of the practice squad spots. But I think it's Liram's to lose. I think it always has been. And, at the end of the day, I just think, the guy's already proven in the CFL. He's a guy that can kick a 70-yard field goal. And now he has that consistency factor going for him. So, I definitely don't worry about him. I do want to double back to what we were talking about last week with the safeties. And Jordan Fuller started the game next to John Johnson. And it sounds like they were using Terrell Burgess more than nickel. What are your thoughts on Jordan Fuller? Because I'll say this. Every year it seems like the Rams draft some guy that I didn't like, or not that I didn't like, but didn't agree with initially, and they proved me wrong. And I feel like Jordan Fuller is like this year's guy that like Jake never saw coming.
Yeah, I think they like him a lot, and I think that they're kind of still experimenting with kind of the scheme that they want to run in that secondary. And something that I didn't catch, and maybe you can answer this for me, is why. I mean, did Taylor Rapp start? Did they play the? I couldn't tell. Did they play the three safeties back there, or was it just Johnson and Fuller out there?
It was just Johnson and Fuller. Rapp actually is hurt, which is a little troublesome. He's got a knee issue, and he's been out the majority of camp.
Yeah. Okay, that is coming back to me. I forget everything, but I do think it is a little bit strange because I do think, just from what I've seen, Burgess is a much better player than Fuller. But again, we don't have that inside look into camp. We're not at camp every day. I don't see what's going on. It's very possible that Fuller has beaten out Burgess for kind of that third safety spot, assuming that Rapp is healthy and comes back. And, there's always the possibility that Rapp misses the first few weeks of the NFL season, and it'll be interesting. We might see John Johnson and Jordan Fuller out there starting, and that would be shocking to me because I would have expected it to be Terrell Burgess and John Johnson out there starting.
Yeah, I mean, I would have as well. But I mean, I guess they saw something in him. You can't knock this scout. The scout group. I mean, it was a fantastic draft. So, I mean, I already thought it was the best draft I've seen in recent memory. And now if Fuller ends up being better than I expected, then, I mean, we're really talking. But I will throw in that Darrell Henderson, who was getting a lot of reps, he suffered it looks like an ankle issue or no, a hamstring issue. So he is expected to go for week 1, but that obviously wasn't good. The good news is that was their only injury of the scrimmage, and to add to that, the Rams ended up getting rid of 2 players. They cut Josh Love, the San Jose State quarterback, and they cut the linebacker, and his name totally just escaped me. He's from Texas State. And they added 2 linebackers, Daniel Batuli, who was already on the roster. They cut him due to the numbers game early on. He's a big 6'3", 255-pound linebacker from Tennessee. And Derek Moncrief, who is an interesting one. He was at Oklahoma State and Auburn, and he ended up transferring, or rather, he transferred over from being a strong safety, and he converted to a linebacker. He's 27. He spent some time in the CFL. He intrigues me because he offers something that not really any of the other linebackers are offering, with that kind of, that ability to cover like a safety. And, I think he's not exactly going to 100% guaranteed to make this roster, but I mean, this is not a linebacker group that I'm excited about by any means. I think, long-term, the potential's there, but I don't think, you go in with Micah Kaiser and Trayvon Howard and think that you're one of the best position groups in the league. Then you have Kenny Young, who's, Kenny Young and Troy Reed are actually the most, they actually have the most experience on the roster for linebacker, in case you didn't know that. Clay Johnston, then you have Christian Roseboom, then you have Derek Moncrief and Daniel Batuli. So it should be interesting. Again, the NFL season, it's starting, I believe, is it a week later than last year? So, there's going to be more time than usual. It'll be interesting to see who makes the roster of the linebackers, because I don't know how you can't keep all of them, obviously. I mean, that would be ridiculous. You'd be looking at, 8 to 10 linebackers. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that they have a tough decision to make. And, if there's somebody somebody doesn't work out, I don't think they'll be quick. They won't they will be quick to get rid of them. And I think, this is a team you're going to have to wait and see, because there could be a player that's on another roster right now where the Rams have on their, NFL player big board, and they're eyeing in case they get cut to replace anybody in that linebacker room.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. And anytime you start to get into this part of training camp, these questions and these thoughts seem so much more relevant than, after the draft or when you first start training camp. And, I think everyone right now is from a fan's perspective, it's not that we aren't interested in this. It's also like, we just want to get to the season. I mean, I'm still kind of in that like fight or flight mode where I'm just really hoping that the season starts on time and that we can have a full 17 weeks. I'm excited to draft for fantasy. We're also, we mentioned that earlier, but we're also like in that getting close to that time where everyone's having their fantasy drafts, and we just want to see the NFL season executed well, in the kind of the way that the NBA has done since, they came back and keeping everyone COVID free. I certainly hope that the NFL can do that. And, I that's kind of where my focus is at. I'm really excited just to see the season start and to also see, what the final roster looks like.
Yeah, it should be interesting for sure. I mean, I can't imagine what it's going to look like. At some point, I'm going to have to imagine and, put together a 53-man roster prediction. But I think it definitely makes things a little easier and a little more intriguing based on the 16-man practice squad. It's kind of unprecedented. So, no, it is unprecedented. So, we'll see, but that's going to do it for us. Hope you guys enjoyed. This has been episode 305 of the Downtown Rams podcast. Once again, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, take care.